Hey guys, I'm Jackie Brubaker. I'm an author, a motivational and career coach, and host of That Girl the Podcast. Each week, I bring on a leader in their field to talk about how to stop making excuses and how you can start living your lifelong dream. That Girl the Podcast is based on That Girl the Novel, which is on Amazon to download or buy the paperback of. You can also follow us on Instagram at That Girl the Podcast and our Patreon page. Nikki Nash, welcome to That Girl the Podcast. I'm so excited to have you on. I like to let people introduce themselves in brief because I feel like they always do a better job than I could for them. So, in brief, tell us who you are.
Well, thank you so much for having me on the show. I am so excited to be here. And as you mentioned, my name is Nikki Nash. I am a podcast host, just like yourself. I'm an author, just like you. I feel like we have so much in common. I used to work in publishing, so I saw you were at Conde Nast. I used to be at Time Inc. and some of those guys. So I'm like, I love it. But I am a CEO of a company called Market Your Genius, and we're a training and developing company for entrepreneurs who want to turn their experiences and expertise into a profitable business where they can impact more people and create a life that they're madly in love with.
Oh, I love that. That just felt so good. Like it just went over me. I was like, that feels so right. So you did not always have this business. You started off working for big brands and big companies and developing them. Tell me a little bit about that, how you got your start in that, and then when you decided no longer, moving forward.
Yeah, so I really wish I knew earlier how much fear and disempowering thoughts impact decision making. And I actually wanted to be an actress in high school and going into college. And I had all of these fears about going into acting. And so I found love of journalism. I always loved writing, and I thought I was going to be a journalist. And I ended up, though, going to this NYU Summer Publishing Institute program and fell in love with marketing folks. And so I ended up taking a job at InStyle magazine right after I graduated college. And then that was a contract position. And so I did that, and they introduced me to folks at Travel and Leisure magazine. And next thing I knew, I was working at an ad agency. And then I was interning at Coca-Cola while I was getting my MBA. And I just kept going down this business pathway, and I worked at Intel, and people were like, oh my goodness, your career is amazing, except for I was building this career and I would stay at a job no longer than I think almost 3 years. Intel was the longest I stayed somewhere. It was almost 3 years. Okay. And I kept leaving because I was looking for the thing that was going to make me happy, the thing where I felt like, oh, I'm making a huge impact in the world. I'm living my purpose. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't finding that thing. And so I decided I was going to start my business. It really came from a kind of life-changing personal event that we can talk about in a second. But long story short, I left Intel to start my business, freaked out about not knowing how to replace my income, because at that point I was making six figures, and I was like, this is scary. And I ended up working at tech startups. I became head of marketing at tech startups and said, I'm going to learn how to start a business from somebody else, only to realize that it's although just a giant science experiment. Like it's just science experimentation over and over and over again. Yeah. And once I realized that, I said, I'm never going to be ready enough, so I might as well do it now. And that's what got me really moving into building this business.
I think that is so true. You're never going to be ready enough. You can go get your MBA. You can do all the things. And starting your own business is terrifying. Losing that income that you're used to, like, how am I going to replace this by myself, is really scary. So you take the leap and you start your business. How long ago was that, by the way?
It was 5 years ago.
Okay. 5 years is kind of like the magic number, I think. Whenever I'm listening to people, even in things that I've done, I'm like, 5 years, once you hit the 5-year point, it's like things just kind of click into place and all that good stuff. So tell me about starting your business.
Yes. So I completely agree with you. It's perseverance kind of gets you through. Mm-hmm. But what started my business essentially was this desire to help people. And I truly believe that anybody can create a life they're madly in love with. And as I started thinking about how I could help people do that, for me, it was in career. And I was in a career that wasn't fulfilling, and I wanted to create something for myself through entrepreneurship. But so many people have this dream to make a big impact into the world, to create a business that they love, but they don't necessarily have the, whether it's training or tools or resources to discover how to consistently bring in clients and customers. And so the dream doesn't get enough, fire or like underneath it to really flourish and keep moving forward. And so I was really inspired for my business to create a ripple effect in the world where I help mission-driven people get their mission and vision and message out there that helps transform other people. And then it just keeps rippling affecting, because if somebody's transformed, they're living a happy life, they're setting an example for people in their life, and it just keeps ripple affecting from there on out.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you. And that can also be triggering too when, you see people doing well and you're not doing well. It can go one of two ways. It can be like, oh, I'm going to work harder to get on that level, or I don't like the cheese there. And like, you can go a very negative way. I like people who go for the positive way, but it's tough, it's tough. It depends on where you're at that moment too, when you're feeling that. So tell me about your personal experience that kind of changed your life.
Yes, I was like, let's go to the what the heck had you quit your job? I quit my job without a plan. Technically, I did it twice, but the first time was for a very specific reason. And it was 2013, and it was in May, and I was sitting in the back seat of my dad's car. And it was really crazy because I was scrolling through my phone, and on that day, I believe it was May 13th, Angelina Jolie had published an op-ed with the New York Times called My Medical Choice. And it was about her decision to have preventative surgery because a BRCA1 gene mutation, which essentially puts her at higher risk for breast cancer, ran in her family.
Right.
And I'm sitting in the backseat of my dad's car reading this while I'm being driven. It was like my whole family was packed in this car. My mom was in the car, my sister was in the car, I was in the car, my dad was driving. And we were going to get genetic testing because my mom had tested positive for the BRCA2 gene mutation, which makes you at high risk for ovarian cancer.
Oh, wow.
And she had to take that test because my aunt, her sister, was diagnosed with ovarian cancer, and their mother had passed away from ovarian cancer. So we're like, okay, too many people have got something going on. So everybody got tested. And then once my mom tested positive, my sister and I had to get tested.
Yeah.
And so sitting in the backseat of the car, reading this article, like bawling because I hadn't told any of my friends that I was getting tested because I didn't know how to communicate it. I was just like, I don't know. I'm feeling all of these things. I don't know how to communicate these feelings. I was in New Jersey at the time visiting home, but I had moved to Portland, Oregon. And so my friends and we were all over the place. And so in terms of distance, and I read this article and forwarded it to my friends and said, hey, I wanted to share this with you because I'm actually getting genetic testing for something very similar. Ovarian cancer runs in my family. My aunt's diagnosed. And I realized in that moment how powerful being vulnerable and sharing your story is, because it has the power to help somebody else who's going through pretty much the same thing or something very similar as you. And I think so often it could feel like we're the only one, going through something or the only one that's been here. But when in reality, our lives, there's 7 billion people on the planet, if not more. And so there's definitely somebody else who has experienced something very similar or can see themselves in you and your story, that by you being open and sharing it, it's powerful. And so at that moment, that's the first time I knew I was going to leave my job, because I was like, I don't know how long I'm going to be on this planet. I didn't know if I had the gene yet or not. And I was like, I don't want to spend my life in a cubicle. I want to change the world. And I quit my job, and then I told you guys the story of I got scared and took another job, and then I had to quit that job. But it really inspired me to help other people find their stories, share their stories, and create that impact in the world. Because when you can be brave enough to share yourself with others, it could really have a profound difference in the world.
Oh, I completely agree with that. Do you have the gene?
I do not. My sister and I both tested negative.
Wow.
So that was a relief in a lot of ways. And unfortunately, my aunt passed away of ovarian cancer. Yeah, a couple of years after she was diagnosed. It had spread. But she found out that we didn't test positive, and that made her very happy because she didn't want anybody else to kind of go through this. And I think, it's not her fault that the gene ran in our family, but I think she had a little bit of guilt too. So I think it brought her some peace that we didn't have it.
Yeah. Is your mom okay?
Yeah, she had preventative surgery. And she goes in for regular testing. So it's just kind of the preventative surgery reduces the risk, but it doesn't change your DNA. So
Right.
it's still, I guess, somewhat of a risk, but very much reduced.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's really hard to deal with, and I can't imagine being in the car driving to do that all together as a family. Just so many feelings and, oh my gosh, so much emotion. I'm very happy that you guys are okay. But it is those moments in your life that are just big wake up calls of, what am I doing? Like, what time do I have left? And no one's guaranteed one more day either. I mean, we could, trip and fall and that's it, and it could just come out of nowhere. We have no idea. And it is so important to just live the life that you really want to live, even though it seems impossible or scary at the moment. It's, very brave to quit your job twice and to just believe in yourself enough that I think, sometimes it's more of just a knowing that you are made for more, that you're here for more than just getting by or making a lot of money. It's so much more than that. Being successful isn't always tied to how much money you're making or how many houses you own. It's really, what success do you feel that you've made in giving to the world? Like you said, like touching other people with your story. It's so powerful. And I do feel that there is a shift happening. And I'm going to say Oprah started this shift. I really do think there is a shift that is happening where people are they're getting more comfortable with talking about stuff that's hard to talk about. And because of it, people are able to feel less alone and sometimes get even, information to help themselves feel better. So go on. So now you're starting your business. What was that like in the very beginning? What did that look like?
Yeah. So in the very, very beginning, I started a consulting business where I was helping startups, and I ended up I was paid hourly. I was on retainer. I basically created a bunch of full-time, part-time jobs for myself where I worked from my apartment, and I did not like it. Like, what is this?
It's weird, right? It's very weird.
And I was living in Boston, and I remember going, okay, I don't like this business that I've created. And I met this business coach, and I hired the business coach hoping that they would help me figure out what business I wanted to create or how I could pivot mine or adjust mine so that I wasn't miserable in it. And then I found coaching, and I said, what is this? And so I started researching coaching. Didn't even realize I had an executive coach technically at Intel. I just didn't really put two and two together that coaching was a thing that people did.
Same. I really didn't know what coaching was. And someone's like, you'd be an excellent coach. I'm like, what is that?
You're like, explain. And so I found the coaching world, and ultimately through hiring coaches and doing some coaching myself, I realized that I really wanted to live in the world of marketing, mentorship, and advisory, with coaching being one of the tools in my toolkit, because I truly believe that when you're building a business and when you're marketing and getting your message out there, you honestly have to discover for yourself what is the right next step, because somebody else's exact plan isn't going to be your exact plan. And so it's figuring out what is going to work for you, what's in alignment with your strengths, and doubling down on that. And for me, in terms of answering your question about like the early days of my business, it was a lot of pivoting. It was a lot of testing and trying stuff over and over and over again. And I wrote this way in my book, and I don't know. Sometimes when I'm writing, I come up with stuff. I'm like, that's funny. I think I should say that to somebody. But I essentially said, starting a business is like metaphorically falling off the bike and getting back on, only you just fall so many times that it's going to take reconstructive surgery to fix your face. And then, at some point you'll have enough money to do that, and you'll just be happy and keep on moving because you just fall over and over and over and over again, failing over and over and over again. And it takes resilience and like blindfold optimism or something to keep moving forward.
Oh, it is absolutely blindfold optimism. My mom and I both worked in entertainment for a very, very long time. And she's like, in order to be an actor, but I do believe this is in any field, you have to have this kind of blind confidence, this blind, like, no doubt, like you're going to make it. And those people do make it. It's this crazy, it's a little between crazy and genius, It's like, again, like how far will you take this and see what happens? Like, where's your endpoint? And yeah, I mean, that's such a huge part of just being a business owner and starting a business is so many failures. Also, so many things you're just like, oh, wait, and now I have to learn this? Like, What is this? I didn't know that is there someone I can hire to do that for me? Like, that's where I'm at these days. I'm like, I only have so much brain power left, and it's not going to go towards this part. This is somebody else's job.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that.
Yeah. So let's talk about your book.
Yes. So my book is called Market Your Genius. It's really a guide to getting new leads for your business, getting dream clients, building that, dream community of loyal followers that people always hope for. But the way I look at the book is it's part marketing, and it pulls you in with the marketing, but it all starts with who you are, the business and life that you want. I share a lot of, the mistakes that I've made along the way. It is a lot of fun for me to share this content with the world because my goal is really to show folks that they're not alone and you keep moving forward. You're going to make mistakes along the journey. I made a ton. I make up words. I'm pretty sure blindfold is not a word, but you do stuff like that and you keep moving forward. I like it, And so the book hopefully gives people permission to show up as their self, make mistakes, and just kind of laugh at themselves, keep moving forward until they figure out what's really going to work for them. But you have to show up every day. And so it gives you a roadmap for showing up every day while also making fun of myself and real talk about what it's going to look like, because you're going to fall and have to get back up over and over and over again.
Seriously. What's one thing that one fall you have had that was especially like funny or just tough that you had to get over?
Funny or tough? So one of the things that I had to kind of work through, I laugh at myself now a little bit, but it's tough, was that I really wanted to have this magical life where I was traveling all over the place and making all this money and, was in Bali, like everybody else and their mother and stuff like that. And at least that's what
pray, love it.
Right. I thought I could eat, pray, love it. I thought that's even what I wanted. Turns out that life I found exhausting. But along the way of me trying to figure out the exact plan to live that life and to also live that life at the same time, I got myself into ridiculous debt. Like I spent easily like 80 grand on coaching in my first few years of business. That I was like, it's okay because I'm going to invest this money and then it's going to make me like 5x what I put in. And I was like spending, credit cards and my savings and I borrowed money from my parents and I had some inheritance from stuff. I was spending money and it's tricky because people say, invest in your business, invest in yourself. And I'm like, I'm investing. No, I was spending. There's a difference because investing usually makes you money back. And it's also risky, but like you usually see a return on investments. And I would say that, the hard part wasn't the spending of the money or even the looking at what worked and didn't work. The hard part for me was really letting go of blaming myself for spending the money and getting myself in debt because it wasn't like I invested in training and coaching and whatnot and didn't get anything out of it. It's just that I maybe didn't get what I was expecting to get or what I thought I was going to get. And I am a full believer that, you create the life that you have, whether it's the life that you want or not. And so really staying in the money game, blame game was not serving me. And so I really had to work through that from a mindset perspective and an emotional perspective in order to then see any sort of return. So it was tough, but it was the journey that I had to go through. And I'm grateful for it, because otherwise, if it didn't happen now, it probably would have happened at some point. And, then I probably would have lost way more than $80,000, so to speak.
Jill, that's a good chunk of money to lose. Ouch. My heart hurts right now for you. I'm like,
it's okay. I made it back. I made it back eventually.
There you go. But that is a real thing that happens for people. They get very confused on investing in yourself, which you're right, is important. And also just spending. When you were making this mistake, what was it that got you out of it? Like, how did you turn the page and dig yourself out?
Yeah. Well, first I had to start believing that I could make this business work whether I spent money on somebody else's program or not. Mm-hmm. And I had to start there because I was so, for lack of a better word, desperate. And I wasn't even desperate at the time that I started investing. I was excited, but I was... Maybe it wasn't, I don't know if it was desperate or excitement, but it was somewhere along the lines of, I've believed so much in my business and I wanted to see it work and I didn't want to look like an idiot. It was probably, either way, it was my ego in some way, however it was showing up, telling me, hey, you need to make this business work. You need to be making 6, 7, 8 figures in this business because you quit a high-paying, 6-figure job to start
it.
No pressure. No pressure, right? And so I really had to let go of unrealistic expectations and timelines and remember why I was building this business in the first place. And while I was building it, so yes, I wanted a certain lifestyle for myself and all that jazz, but I started it so that I'd be fulfilled and happy. Mm-hmm. And I started it to make a big impact in the lives of others. And so I had to really let go of any mistakes that I made or how much money I spent or blaming myself or telling myself I was bad with money and all the things that I was telling myself. Mm-hmm. I had to work through that in order to focus on the things that would make me money, which were my clients and customers. And so it took a lot of just being aware of the thoughts that were going on in my mind, a lot of journaling through, like, is this real or is it just a thought? It's just a thought. Mm. And I have tons of thoughts. That doesn't mean that it's real. If I have the thought that I'm, really mad at someone and I'm never going to speak to them again, is that real? No, I'll probably speak to them the next day. I just had a moment and I was angry, right? And so if I can treat those thoughts as, that was just a thought, why can't I treat the thoughts that I think about myself the same way? And so I really had to just go, oh, that's a funny thought, Nikki. That's ridiculous. You're amazing. And I guess the last thing I'll say on that is I do this for have my clients do this, but it started with me, where I create something called the effing fabulous list.
Ooh, I like this.
Yeah. And you can fill in the blanks, but I write out all the reasons why I'm effing fabulous. And I read it to myself, and I read it before sales calls or, before I do a webinar or whatever it is I'm doing. I read it when I'm feeling down. I'm reading it when I'm having negative thoughts. And it just reminds me of why I'm so amazing. And that really helps me stay in alignment with what I want to do with my business, because your thoughts can either disempower you or empower you. So I choose to think empowering thoughts, or at least remind myself of them when I'm not thinking empowering thoughts.
Right. Oh my gosh, that's so huge and so part of it. People do completely believe every thought that they think as if it is real, especially when things are tough. Then you really start believing it. I just talked about this, where when you're journaling, especially when you're having a really tough time and you're journaling down all the stuff, all the bad stuff, if you ever look back on like a day that you feel fine, you're going to read how ridiculous and like a 12-year-old having a temper tantrum you sound, because you do. You sound crazy. And if someone was like, no, that's how you are, that's how you really are, you'd be like, that's insane. I'm not like that at all. Yes, it is such a mindset. And, to me, it's just energy. It's like if you're constantly feeling this dark, negative energy, even if you've made mistakes, you can still make solutions. You can still dig yourself out. You can still find a way to make this work. It's not just like, oh, you failed and that's it forever. It's all you got. You get that one shot. But these negative emotions can really just drive your life. And, if you let it, you can let your really mad 3-year-old ego drive you. And it's really up to you to be like, no, let's like hold the phone. I'm an adult. I can figure this out. This little temper tantrum I'm having, like, okay, sure, let's like feel our feelings and then let's move on. So your book comes out in August of this year, correct?
Yes, August 24th. I am so excited.
I'm so excited for you. I love Hay House, which is your publisher. They put out the best books, in my opinion, and a lot of other people's opinion. How did you connect with them? How did you decide that this was my publisher?
Yeah, so it is funny because I believe it all started with me committing to working on a book in the first place. And that kind of propelled me on this path. And so I had on my New Year's resolution list and my dream list to write a book for over a decade. It was like, write a book before you graduate college, write a book before you turn 22, write a book before you turn 25, write a book before you turn 30, write a book before you turn 35. It was like always on the list.
Yeah.
And I watched this Brendan Burchard video, and he's a Hay House author as well, that essentially said, if he looks at your calendar, he should be able to see what you're working towards. And if you have a dream and it's not on, he can't tell that it's a priority on your calendar, it's not going to happen. Mm-hmm. And he said it in a much more eloquent and nicer way. But in my mind, it said, oh, crud, if I don't start working on this book in some way, shape, or form, it's never going to happen. And that's just something that I could not accept. I'm like, it's happening. And so I started looking at all of the people who I admired. And I would say the majority of them had a book that was out in the world. And a lot of folks that I really liked listening to had books written by Hay House or published by Hay House, written by them, published by Hay House. And I really started just Googling, how the heck does somebody get a Hay House book deal? And or just a book deal in general, because that's where everybody goes. You go to the Google, Google.
To the Google.
My mom would say, like, you go to Google. And I would just look and research. And something interesting happened in the universe when I said, I'm going to work on my book. I'm going to publish a book. I want a Hay House book deal. I kept meeting people who had book deals. Now, their book deals weren't with Hay House, but they had book deals. And so I would say, how did that happen? And folks I had a notebook where I just wrote down everybody's answer, and all the answers sounded the same, where it's like, first you have to build your platform and audience to around 50,000 people. And then you have to get an agent, and you pitch a bunch of agents, and maybe one of them will like you. And then once you have an agent, like they'll pitch you to, hopefully, then they pitch you to a publisher, and then maybe the publisher will take you. And I was like, this sounds terrible. I was like,
it is.
Right?
Yes,
like,
it is.
And so I kept listening and writing it down. And I said, I feel like I'm going to find another way. And I was like, challenge accepted. And so I don't even know. I tried to find it again. I don't know how it appeared in my search. I don't know how I found it. But this woman wrote an article about how she got a Hay House book deal without an agent. And I was like, amazing.
Please send me that article, please.
I need to find it. I don't know where it is, but I can tell you what it said. And then you can kind of go with this episode. This could be the replacement of the article is this podcast.
Perfect.
And I found out that she went to a Hay House Writers Workshop event. And what they do at this event is they allow you to submit a book proposal without having an agent, and they'll review all the submissions, but you have to do a certain number of things before you can submit. But it's almost a direct line to the editorial team at Hay House looking for new talent and things along those lines. And so you can submit your book proposal, but you have to do it by a certain time, which they give you if you attend the event, and you only get that one shot. Like, you can't go, oh, thank you for submitting, and then get a million other ways. I mean, there are, I guess, other ways that you could do it in theory. Like you can keep trying to go to the same event over and over again, but that would be quite expensive. But they give one person out of all the submissions a book deal. And so I went to the event, and I actually signed up for another event with Hay House as well. And I showed up and I listened to all the things that I would have to do in order to get to submit my book proposal. And I went to the mic. They had mics where you can ask questions. I have no idea what I said. I'm pretty confident I blacked out during this experience. But when I was done talking, people were laughing and clapping. And I was like, what the heck did I say? I'm pretty confident I was supposed to be asking a question. I have no idea what I said. Then Reed Tracy, who's the CEO, said something. I don't know what he said because I don't remember what I said. And I sat down and people were like, oh, you're so getting this book deal. And I was like, what did I say though? But like, real talk, what happened?
Oh my gosh.
And so it just felt like a lot of me putting it into the universe. I think at some point on stage, I said something like, I can't wait for you guys to publish my book. Like I said something crazy. Who says that? That's the only part that I remember.
You were so downloaded. That's amazing. You were totally out of your body. And then like your representative came in and was like, here's what you're going to say. And then you came back and we're like, and what happened?
Exactly. I'm like, what just happened? And so I remember that, I ended up meeting at that event, some people on the editorial team at Hay House, even though I didn't really realize it. And long story short, when it came time to submit the book proposal for the deadline, I was free. I talked myself out of it a little bit. And so 48 hours before the deadline, I said, Nikki, get your stuff together and submit a book proposal. And I wrote my book proposal in 48 hours. And it had to include the outline of the book, a sample chapter, my whole marketing plan. It's like a business plan for your book.
Wow.
I didn't sleep. I barely ate. I was exhausted. I wrote the whole thing, 48 hours. And then I gave it to my sister. I'm like, can you read this? Like, who knows how many pages? I was like, so many pages, this book proposal to make sure it's grammatically sound to some degree. I still found typos in it afterwards, but it didn't even matter because when I hit submit, I was like, I'm getting this book deal. And I believed again. And I was just like waiting. Essentially, I sat there. I'm like, I'm just waiting for their call. I'm waiting for their call. And then the call didn't come by the time I thought it was coming. I mean, it did eventually come, but like, I'm sitting there like, it's not coming. And in between all of this, I found out that Hay House at the time, I don't even know if they still do it, but they were doing this 6-month mentoring experience with Reed Tracy, who's the CEO of Hay House, and Cheryl Richardson, who's another one of their authors. And I got that as well. I entered that, applied for that, got that. So I went through the whole mentoring program, waiting for the call about my book. Nothing happened. And then on the last call for that mentoring program, we get off the phone, and then less than 5 minutes later, Reed Tracy, who's the CEO of Hay House, calls me back and goes, I just found out we're publishing your book. And I was like, yay! Because I thought that I didn't get it. Because I'm like, they gave a rough timeline of when I would hear, and I think we're at it, and nobody's called me.
Oh my God, you won the lottery of publishing deals. Oh, that is such a story. Oh my gosh, for every author out there, like that was like the best story ever. That is so inspirational. And that is what is up. That is what it is. It is like you have to not just believe in yourself, but believe that this is going to happen for you because you are worth it. You are smart enough to do this. And again, like you don't need to know everything. You just know that those answers will come and that information will come, that book. Everything will come to you. You just have to be able to put it out there and put yourself out there and be like, no, I'm claiming this is mine.
Yes. And I firmly believe that it was just a combination of inspired action and manifestation. And, if there was ever a time where I wasn't sure if manifestation was a thing, even though I'm pretty sure I've always believed it, this was probably the purest example of it because I knew the moment I signed up for that event, I said, this is happening. And I just really believed it. And I don't know if I believed it because the universe already wrote it out, it was just happening, or if because I believed it, it happened. But all I know is I believed And then I saw.
I know, I think about that too. I'm like, was this already like destined, or was this meh? I don't really care, because when it happens, and it's just like, okay, cool. I also find that when you doubt the universe, it gives you reason to then doubt it. It's like, oh, you don't trust us? Okay, well, we'll tell you why you probably should trust us. And then like something is taken away and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm sorry. Okay, I trust you. I trust you. And then it comes back. You're like, whew, never doing that again. Sorry if I like thought I knew better. And that's the truth. It's like, gosh, listen, like we're just humans, right? Okay, we're like souls living this like human experience, and we're just trying to do the best we can with these brains that only give us like 5% or 10% of, them. So like we're doing the best we can, but I love your story so much, and it is so inspiring, and I can't wait to read your book. Oh, is there one last thing you'd like to tell our audience about either manifesting or something that's important to you that can help them in their journey?
Yeah, I would say that you don't need to know the entire pathway to get to where you want to go. You just need to know the next step. Mm-hmm. And you don't even need to know if the next step is the right next step, because there were tons of steps that I took in this pathway to getting a book deal, or even bringing a book into the world, that probably weren't a direct path, but it got me closer to where I was going. And so let's just stay in action. And if you can keep taking actions in alignment with what you want, then you'll see what it is that you desire. You just have to believe and take action.
Yes. Amen to that. Aw, Nikki, you're so cute. Thank you so much for coming on. Tell everyone what your book is called, and you'll probably just be able to find it on Amazon, right? When it comes out in August?
Yep. So it's called Market Your Genius. You will be able to find it on Amazon, Target, I believe like Books A Million, all of the places. And if you head to my website, marketyourgenius.co, we'll have all of the information on how you can order, how you can get some really cool bonuses if you pre-order, but all of this happens a bit closer to when it'll come out, but it'll all be there.
Oh my gosh, so exciting. Congratulations again. And just thank you for coming on. It was so nice to meet you. This is such a fun chat.
Likewise. Thank you so much for having me.